Well, this thing is finally going to wrap up here, I think, for everyone's sake. The fan base has been so divided. It's been such a tiresome topic, but it's right there on Front Street. It's been an important topic, this Jonathan Kuminga saga, the contract, the fit, Kerr, the system, all of it. Last night, Kuminga gets DNP'd in Chicago. I must admit, through at least the first half and still until someone asked me about it, I thought they were just listing him with that knee tendonitis, knee soreness again. Can y'all, because a lot of y'all were on my neck when I said I don't buy the knee soreness thing a few weeks ago. You think you're a doctor? Like, it's okay to admit when you were wrong. Like the dude, he's been acting like a brat. And to quote the famous meme, you're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy. You're not good enough to hold an organization hostage like this. Sorry. And I'll reiterate what I said in the last video. How much the blame pie, you can blame the mishandling of him initially and it not being a good system fit. But at the end of the day, that's what it is, right? And I think that his agent has mishandled things even worse and just not guided him correctly. It's unfortunate. And so he DNPs, and I wanted to read you a comment from Crazy Man 5150 Ninja Manu, because I thought that this was pretty on point here, and then you can't shoot the messenger. Quote, to be an ISO scorer, there is level of fluidity and touch you need, like Paul George, Kyrie, Harden, Luka, or you are much stronger than everyone else to where it doesn't matter, like Zion, Julius Randle. Kuminga isn't the bully that Randle or Zion is. Maybe he gets stronger with age. And he doesn't have the natural touch or fluidity to be an ISO scorer. So JK sits in that weird spot of not being a 6'9", 250 bully and also not having the necessary fluidity to be an ISO player. The DeRozan Kawhi comp can only be credible if he improves his touch and ball handling. Both are horrible for Kuminga right now. And I said, hey, it's too late for touch. And I know you know that just based on that comment, right? And it's something that I've talked about in the last few patron breakdowns because it got me to thinking. That was the comment that got me to thinking, can you develop touch? What's the touch cutoff line? Because I think when you talk shooting in general, it's much earlier than you suspect. We saw Josh Giddey last night, and we're seeing it more and more where guys are becoming better shooters far later in their careers because it's becoming a necessity, and so they're allowed a longer runway. But touch, I don't know, man. Like you go watch like some 10 and 11-year-olds play basketball. There's kids with touch and there's kids without it. I don't know if you develop that, and Kuminga doesn't have touch. But it is what it is. I don't want to focus too much on that. I will have a updated trade video for you this week on my thoughts on Kuminga because I think some of the possible moves have changed for me. For instance, last night in this Bulls game, look, the Bulls started 6-1. Kobe White returns, and they haven't really won since. And in theory, on paper, myself included, a lot of us was like, hey, Kobe White would be great. Kobe White would be great. I'm watching him last night, and he's kind of an airhead. He kind of just runs around with his head cut off. There's not a lot of anticipation or thinking. He's just really fast, and he can score. But it's like a part Jordan Poole, part Buddy Hieldish type of vibe from Kobe White. And we already got Buddy. There's only room for one, airhead on the roster, in my opinion. So I'm out on Kobe White. Vucevic, Quentin Post has thoroughly outplayed him in both of their matchups. And we'll talk about, let's start with QP. I was never worried about the shooting. He was down, someone had asked me the other day, he's down to like 33%. And if patrons, like in the breakdowns, I haven't really spoken. I haven't broke down his release. I love to get into the mechanics of a shooter. And I was like, I ain't worried about that. Because the shot is pure and you can tell he's mentally tough. So it was a slump. But he broke out of the slump last night, 3 threes in that first quarter, and it was chicken soup. The Bulls, when you look at why, it was pretty easy to see why they're not good. Because you've got Giddey, who can't get down in stance and move laterally. Vucevic is helpless in drop coverage. And Kobe White, again, running around with his head cut off, just not thinking, not making smart plays. And Billy Donovan gets a lot of credit, I guess, because of his career resume, the national titles at Florida, and he's an OG. His team doesn't talk at all. They don't talk at all. So as far as the Vucevic or Kobe White discussion, I'm not really interested in those cats. I'm really not. Now, Buzelis, the hometown kid, you ain't getting him, but he's got a real shot. I think if his body holds up, he's going to be a star player. But post, the defense, distance management is a term that I like to use. I stole it from fighting, right? The range of a fighter and their striking. And, much like touch, I'm not sure how much better you can get at it. I think if you're all right at it, if you're decent, then you can get really good. But if you're bad at distance management, like a James Wiseman, you're never going to get good. You just don't have that feel for it. Similar to touch, it's just your nervous system, your hands and everything, the fluidity of your play. I don't know if you can develop that. And Quentin has shown he went from all right, he gets it, but can he do it? And he's become an elite distance manager defensively, if you want to simplify why he's gotten so good. Plus, you heard the comments from Ron Adams, who's still, I guess, around the team. He doesn't want to get scored on. There's a competitiveness, a fieriness to Quentin Post that lends itself to getting stops and being a defensive player. I want you to notice something that I've noticed the last few games on this road trip. Him and GP2 barking at each other. Now, I don't think it's a problem. I think that they're both competitive and, it's fine. But it's funny because GP2, thinks of himself as one of the OGs on the team, rightfully so. Like he's got the hardware to prove it. But I don't think he likes QP telling him he made a mistake and they kind of bark back at each other and keep it moving. I've seen it a couple times on this road trip. Brandon Podziemski comes off the bench. And what did he have? 27 and 8. Shot the 3-ball really decisively for the second time in a row. And I was thinking, listen, the pressure's on. Pat Spencer's, clearly cracked the rotation. Melton's back. Seth is a part of the team now. And it's how are you going to respond? And he's responded so far, right? And, that fake it till you make it mentality that can get you far in life. Sometimes you need that mentality. But I think sometimes it can backfire for somebody where you kind of fool yourself into thinking you've made it, right? Where Pods had been carrying himself, speaking, and kind of trying to act like, hey, I'm certified. I'm one of the guys. I'm a certified starter. And hell, Kerr has been treating him that way. And so that probably led to some of it too. But now maybe in more of a chip on the shoulder underdog role of I've got to fight for my minutes. The early response has been really good. There's no denying that. And so that was good. But I think that the most important thing last night was Jimmy not only playing, but moving well. He takes the fall on the hip, then he gets clipped on the knee against OKC. And it was oh man, it's hard to gauge Jimmy's physical well-being because he's just so coy and it's hard. And so I was okay, is he a decoy? Did he just want to play against the team that drafted him? No, he was shooting passing lanes. He ran the floor. He went downhill. He was, and he eventually landed the knockout punch in that fourth quarter where the Bulls, they had cut it to 10. They cut it to 8. Brandon's hit, big shot Brandon, because Pods is hit. If you notice, he's hitting some really timely shots over the last few games. But then Jimmy was nah, y'all putting Big Twilight on me. Y'all putting Zach Collins on me. And, there was a flurry of points, a couple dart threes, and the Bulls rolled over. And so we end up going 2-1 on this road trip. You've got 4 days of rest, even more for some of these veteran guys that have been out. We see the Wolves back at home where they're starting to get it together. They've had kind of a rough and up and down start. They're still looking for a point guard. But, that's going to be a spicy matchup, just considering we owe them. We owe them, right? Because all we heard all summer was if we had Steph, we would have beat them in that playoff matchup, and that's all they've heard. So I expect a spicy matchup Friday back in San Francisco with a much more complete roster. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.